If in fact this video has been made into a two-parter, this is me introducing the second part. Hello. An unhaul, reckoning, organization of these two shelves that were previously double stacked. They probably will be double stacked still. But at the end of this one, I'll be going over the tallies, organizing, and debriefing again on the books that I'm getting rid of. So thank you for spending this time with me and rolling the other footage. Okay, time for the second shelf. And to the point of this whole video, I don't even know what's on here because a lot of it is covered by this cat basket and there's absolutely no place to move this. So let me just try to pull things out. Oh, see? Okay. This is The Birds by Tarjei Vesaas. I do not know how to pronounce Norwegian names. Typically, I look up how to pronounce all foreign names of any stripes, but my computer's in the other room. This is what we're going with, kids. Translated from Norwegian by Torbjørn Stoverud and Michael Barnes. I think this is such a brilliant, subtle book that's written from the perspective of a man who has severe mental disabilities. And it's funny, I think, was it Jason from Old Blues Chapter and Verse? Great channel, I'll link it below. We were disagreeing about this on Goodreads. I don't know if I'm remembering that correctly, but we were disagreeing about this because I was basically like, toss Mice and Men from the curriculum and just put this in because I think it's like so much better than Of Mice and Men. And then Jason was defending Of Mice and Men. Tell me if you like Of Mice and Men below. I think it's a thoroughly mediocre book, and that this does so many of the acts of empathy and imagination that was trying to do, but just better. Anyway, would recommend. Oh, hello. Let me unearth these. There's since been a fourth book in this series that I haven't read because they have all new packaging now, and the fourth book doesn't match these. So what am I supposed to do? Buy all the new ones? But I prefer these, so I'm just stuck, and I'll have to read that one on Kindle. But this is the Graceling series by Hurston, who went to my college, incidentally. Hi, Kristen. So this is Graceling, Fire, and then Bitter Blue. And it's interesting. These are, in some ways, very, very stereotypical fantasy, badass heroine YA novels. But in other ways, oh God, I love the mixture of derivative and innovative in here. I think it's really successful. Like, the derivative things are so derivative. Like, the heroine's name in this is Katsa, right? And like, you're coming off the heels of like Katniss Everdeen and you're naming your heroine Katsa. And like, the thing is that there are people with special abilities who have like different colored eyes that like mark them as someone with a special abilities, right? It's just, and I think the villains' names are like such a joke in these books. And so these are the types of things that you like kind of like enjoy because of how lazy they are. But then like, especially Fire, God, I think that this is such an underrated YA book. Incredibly thoughtful in the way that it sets up its world and then handles the implications of that world fully. I might want to discuss this book in a video soon because there are certain ones that I'm seeing on these shelves that I know I've never talked about on my channel ever, but that I have very strong feelings about, and this is one of them. And I would love more people to read this, even if you don't typically read YA, I think. So yeah, but do I keep... Okay, I definitely am keeping Fire. This is one of my favorite YA books ever. Do I keep Graceling and Bitter Blue? Both of which I also enjoyed. And again, both of which have like innovative aspects to them, especially Graceling in terms of the fact that the major relationship in here, spoiler alert, but it doesn't end in marriage. And that's a big plot point, is that like the heroine is in love with a certain man, but she does not want to marry him. And like, when I'm feeling down in the world, I just go on Goodreads and I read irate reviews of people who can't handle any type of monogamy that doesn't end in marriage. It's like losing their minds over this book. I don't know. It's like my personal schadenfreude. Anyway, they do take up a lot of shelf space, and they are, I mean, they're both like beautiful and like very kitschy looking. Actually, you know what I might do? I might gift these to my cousins who are 14 and 16. I think especially the 14-year-old would love these books. Yeah, okay. That's what I might do. I'm keeping Fire for myself, and then I'll gift her these books, and if she likes Graceling, then I'll buy her another copy of Fire. Great. Oh, and that just freed up space on my shelves. Thank you, Francesca. Oh, interesting. This is the Emily trilogy by L.M. Montgomery. This is kind of, I think, did Gia Tolentino call her like the slightly goth version of Anne of Green Gables? So this is Emily of New Moon, the first book, Emily Climbs, and Emily's Quest. And I am going to keep these editions. I don't love the Emily books nearly as much as the Anne books, but there is something really piercing about the third book in the series particularly. And I think it's one of those things that it is cumulative. It's because you've been with the character and you know how just flushingly naive she was in these earlier books, and then to see her grow up and confront aspects of the world that she didn't want to confront in the earlier books, but also retain that joy of the world. And you can kind of sense in a lot of Ella Montgomery's books her trying to push through, and she had a very difficult life herself, and I think it's a real triumph of spirit to have written the heroines that she did, who were always trying to keep that fire and joy in their perception of things, even as they get older and the world seems to grow dimmer. So yeah, I am going to be keeping these for now, but it's possible in the future. I know this is kind of unorthodox, but I might just keep the final book in the series. We'll see. I recently read A Burning by Megha Majumdar, and you know, I loved the way that she was playing with pace, not just with the short-ish chapters, but I thought that she was really clever in a lot of the early sections of this book. And I thought it was quite ambiguous for like 3/4 of the book, and then it got incredibly didactic in the last quarter. And that is one of my pet peeves, that especially with an author who's this talented, this is a debut novel, by the way, an author this talented, where I feel that she was getting a lot of points across so effectively in the first 3/4 of the book anyway, that then just to kind of like drive them home so forcefully at the end. I mean, that could just be a personal preference thing, but I didn't think it was necessary. So I will be unhauling this, but following this author's career with great interest. The Mad Woman Upstairs by Katherine Lowell. I love this book so much. This is a very rompy Bronte pastiche, and just so self-aware and like purposefully kitschy in places, and I love it dearly. And also it has a quote by Anna James. I love Anna James on the front of it. So yeah, keeping this 100%. Keeping Washington Black by Essie Dugin, because I still haven't read this book, and all signs point to me loving it. So let me get to it soon. And then Matthew gave this to me for my birthday this year. Matthew Sharapa, channel linked below. This is At Swim Two Boys by Jamie O'Neil, and Matthew is trying to fill in the gaps in my Irish reading knowledge, which is just entirely one huge gap. So he's really like starting the Lord's work there. Actually, the Lord's work. This is probably some Catholic hoopla, right? Yeah, Ireland. A Man Who Saw Everything by Deborah Levy. Still have not read this, even though it came out a few years ago, and I just worship at the altar of Deborah Levy. But I think it's because of her novels that I haven't read, this is the one that interests me the most. I think I might initially have been slightly intimidated by this one because everybody says that it's very allegorical and like one of those books where you can read 12 things into any one thing that's there overtly on the page. And I don't know even why I'm thinking that or saying it though, because let's be honest, like I love those types of books more than anything else. Another unread book that I do still plan to read is The Innocents by Michael Crummy. The year that this was shortlisted for the Giller, I went to the Giller readings in New York, and I was really intrigued by the way that Michael Crummy was discussing this book. So I would love to actually read the finished product. A book I've read and really enjoyed is Fire Sermon by Jamie Quattro. I just think it's so smart, and the way it looks at the melding of physical and intellectual attraction and spiritual attraction between people. Yeah, I've never read a book that dealt with religion and bodies and the melding of like that kind of lust, especially intellectual lust. Like I've never read a book that quite did this. This is Olive Again by Elizabeth Strout, and God, you know, I love Elizabeth Strout as an author, and I so enjoyed this book, but Olive Kitteridge is my least favorite of her books that I've read. I far prefer books like The Burgess Boys, which I read ages ago, and Amy and Isabel. And I don't know, like this is such a beautiful edition, and this is one of my favorite authors, so I am going to be keeping this. But yeah, I just don't know if I'll ever reread this particular book. So again, could be on the chopping block at some point. Chopping block at some point when I'm feeling more ruthless. I have 3 books by Sarah Waters. I have Fingersmith, Affinity, and The Paying Guests, all of which I've read. Of these, The Paying Guests is definitely my favorite. Fingersmith is the one that I would recommend to the broadest swath of people, especially if you're just starting with this author. And Affinity is the one I think about the most. So all of them are staying on my shelf, and I look forward to reading the rest of Sarah Waters' work. Okay, we're down to the last shelf here. And I can tell you, I'm not going to pull these out because these are going to stay exactly where they are. But I have a bunch of books, both fiction and nonfiction, by Barbara Kingsolver. And you know what? Barbara Kingsolver was really the author who first got me into literary fiction. Like, she will forever have been my bridge into this world where I now live. And I feel a really deep pull and affection for her work, even though I know that if I read it now, I would still enjoy it, but it wouldn't speak to me quite the way it did, especially in my late teen years. So actually I have 2 editions of The Bean Trees though, so I think I'll like give this one to somebody because The Bean Trees is just like such a delightful novel. And if you're looking for, again, like in terms of me recommending Disgrace to a lot of people as like a literary fiction starter kit, this would also be in that starter kit, I think. It's again, like one that makes you feel warm inside. This is Branwell, a novel of the Bronte brother by Douglas A. Martin. I was sent this by Soft School Press last year when it came out. And I'm planning on kind of doing a Bronte bonanza. I honestly just need my brain to be functioning a little closer to peak level for me to reread some of the Bronte novels. And I want to read some of Emily's poetry and get into some graphic novels surrounding the Brontes. I would love to do like a whole smorgasbord, and this would be part of that. So I'm keeping it for now. 3 books I haven't read, but definitely will. Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. My twin brother read this recently and just loved it to pieces. And he's one of many people over the years who have told me that I would love it also. A Thousand Acres by Jane Smiley. Confession time. I haven't read King Lear all the way through. Okay, I haven't, but I want to read King Lear, obviously, and then read this pastiche of King Lear, and then also We That Are Young by Priti Tanasia, and then The Storyteller by Kate Armstrong. And it's just because, again, knowing Kate and how cerebral and just like insightful she is, I think I would love this novel. And there are some books that I just keep on my shelves because it's that anticipation of loving something that has its own value. But I've maintained that anticipation for too long here, where I just need to read it at this point. So I will. This is A Boy in Winter by Rachel Seffert, and I have a full review of this, which I can link below. I did not love it, but it's one of the only books I've ever read, especially from an English language writer set in Ukraine. And I'm interested in its metaphorical and literal portrayal of Ukraine during World War II. Okay, these 2 books by Donald Ryan, From a Low and Quiet Sea and All We Shall Know. I mean, I really enjoyed both of these. I love Donald Ryan's writing, but I didn't love these books as a whole. Like, it's one of those things, I love elements of each of them, but is that enough for you to want to reread a book in its entirety? To experience those piecemeal things you enjoyed. I don't know. You know what? I might give these to my brother, who I think would really enjoy them. And I want to continue reading Donald Ryan's books, especially I think Rachel told me that his early book, The Spinning Heart, is like her favorite of his. So me unhauling these, gifting these to somebody else is not a reflection of my interest in this author, just in these particular books. Oh, my roommate got me this book. This is Working on a Song, the lyrics of Hadestown by Anais Mitchell. We both loved Hadestown and went to see it together. It's one of those books where it doesn't feel like, you know, your traditional book, but technically it's a book sitting on my shelf that I haven't read. So we'll be keeping it, but it's more like a nostalgic thing that I'll get to eventually. This is Elizabeth's List, A Life Between the Lines by Lula Ellender. Jen Campbell sent me this for Christmas a few years ago. And I think it's funny. I think we exchanged books that Christmas. And I don't know if she's read the one I sent to her either. We're both just like swamped in books, you guys. But also this, if I'm remembering the way that Jen described it, again, feels like one of those bubble baths. Like I've just taken a sip of Prosecco and now my insides feel all bubbly and happy type books. I could be totally wrong about it. I mean, one of the first words on the back of the jacket is death. So like, who even knows? Everything I Never Told You by Celeste Ng. I loved this when I read it several years ago. I suspect that if I read it now, I wouldn't connect to it tonally the way that I did then. So I do think I'm going to unhaul it and gift it to somebody. Maybe I'll gift it to my 16-year-old cousin, because I think she'd really, really enjoy it. And maybe Celeste Ng would be an author she'd like to read more from. Yeah, okay, I think that's what I'll do with this. And again, like I think, you know, you can look back and love what a book was to you and have that be its own sort of inviolable thing, but also not necessarily need it physically present on your shelves for the person you are now. God, confession, I feel like I'm admitting I'm a dunce or something by this one. I did not get The Driver's Seat by Muriel Spark at all. It was my first Muriel Spark. Maybe it was because I read it on a flight. Adam at Memento Mori gifted this to me, and I'm sure he would be hitting his head against a table to think about me not getting it. I mean, it is just profoundly, profoundly weird. And it's one of those books that people who are far smarter than I say is a masterpiece, and like I absolutely believe them. I just couldn't break my way through it. So I am going to unhaul this for now, but I also could see myself in 5 years' time coming across another copy, giving it another try, and being like, what on earth was I thinking? Like that has happened with books that I actually still own, where first time I read them, it was like totally blank reaction. And the second time I was like, oh my God, like how is my past self so thick that she didn't appreciate this? Then I have 3 Maggie O'Farrell books. I've actually read 5 of her books, but I unhauled, dropping books. I unhauled the 2 that I didn't love as much. So her first book, After You'd Gone, her 4th book, The Vanishing Act of Esme Lennox, and her 5th book, The Hand That First Held Mine, are the 3 that I think I might reread at some point in the future. Her 2nd and 3rd books I wasn't such a fan of. And again, I have less of a completionist mentality in terms of what I physically own now, but I'm very happy to own these. Still reading her in chronological order. I do think that Hamnet will be my favorite of her books, but I won't get to it for like 4 more books. Okay, this is History of Wolves by Emily Fridland, and I would like to keep this. This is falling into the chilly, very strange, slightly patchy debut novel category, but I just, at the time and even now thinking back on it, I found this book so intriguing and I would reread it. One that I'm going to unhaul without having fully read is Insomnia by Marina Benjamin. I bought this a few years ago now. I have said several times on this channel now that I struggle with insomnia. I really do. And this has all of the right authors blurbing it. It has Olivia Lang, Danny Shapiro, Frances Spuffer, Deborah Levy. I just found it to be wannabe Maggie Nelson. I am not going to lie to you. Not that Maggie Nelson like owns the corner of the market of this style, but I've tried to read this in the middle of the night when I actually have insomnia. I've tried to read it when I'm wide awake in the middle of the day, and it has never, ever gripped me or even particularly interested me. And I think I need to let it go. Oh, this is The Distant Marbles by Chantal Acevedo, which I believe is a novel set in Cuba and is one of those intergenerational family saga deals. I do not remember how or when this book came into my possession, but I still would like to read it, so I'm going to keep it. Among Others by Jo Walton. I have to keep this for nostalgia alone. I mean, I think this is a mess of a book. The fact that it won the Hugo and Nebula Awards, I think, is a testament to my reaction to it, which is just incredible nostalgia because it's a book about a book lover, and it basically is just like a long bibliography of like all the science fiction books we need in our lives. As a science fiction book itself and like a fantasy book, it's incredibly lacking, but like, do I love it any less for that? No. And will I reread it? Yes. Okay, I am going to unhaul this. Now, this is Hood by Emma Donoghue, and I read and really, really enjoyed this a few years ago. I love that this is an unconventional take on the story of Odysseus and Penelope. It's about a woman in 1980s Ireland whose lover dies in a car crash, and she can't openly grieve her because of homophobia. And I think it's a really powerful book. But again, I don't see myself rereading it anytime in the coming years. Lastly, the last book, and this is another one that's unread, The Blazing World by Siri Hustvedt. Definitely keeping this. I still think that all the conversations that this is trying to have about how we perceive art depending on who the artist is and what we know about their identity is just more alive and blazing than ever, right? Okay, I'm gonna try to make something of the wreckage here and then come back and debrief you on final thoughts. Unread. Unread. It's only just out of reach. Something, something on a beach under a tree. Unread. Oh, I've read the majority of these. Great job, Jen. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so I've just separated the books I'm still keeping into read and unread, and I've read 30 and I haven't read 17. I'm not going to organize on camera because you can't tell from this camera angle quite how claustrophobic this space is that I've been sitting in, and I need to get up and, I don't know, drink some water. But I'm going to be splicing in some footage of the organization that has happened in the meantime, and I'm presumably very happy with it. It's the next day. I took a shower, but I'm still wearing the same shirt. Ask me no questions and I'll tell you no lies. I'm really, really happy with the organization, so let me show you. Here are the new and improved bottom shelves. I'll take you a little closer. This is the new top shelf. I love that you can see the books in the background now, but then I'm also featuring a cover that I love and some of the books that I've appreciated the most of what I've read from these shelves. And then the bottom shelf has also gotten a major glow up. I don't love that there are some books back here that are double stacked, still in that I can't see them from where I'm sitting on the bed, but I'll just have to remind myself from this video that they are also there waiting patiently to be read. And there are a few books that I distributed to other shelves, so that's why you might not see all of them here in frame. Wrapping things up, there are 3 books that are in the maybe category. One of those is Read, The Clay Girl by Heather Tucker. 2 are unread, and I'm going to be reading the first 20 to 30 pages. Born on a Tuesday by Elnathan John and Follow Me to Ground by Sue Rainsford. Inevitable. And then I'm unhauling 14 books. So of those, these 5 are being gifted to other people. The 2 Donald Ryans, probably to one of my brothers. Everything I Never Told You by Celeste Ng to my 16-year-old cousin Sophia, and then Graceling and Bitter Blue to my cousin Francesca. This is just an extra copy of the Bean Trees. So again, maybe I'll give this one to Francesca. Okay, this is 6 books that I'm gifting. And then getting rid of 7 books that I've already read and for various reasons don't think I'll be reading again. So The Driver's Seat by Muriel Spark, Hood by Emma Donoghue, The Girl Who Was Saturday Night by Heather O'Neill, A Burning by Megha Majumdar, Home Fire by Kamala Shamsi. I just added this one. I'm going to be buying the British paperback. I just can't look at this cover anymore, but like I love this book. Lost Children Archive by Valeria Luiselli, and Where Reasons End by Yu Yun Lee. Then the only unread book that I'm unhauling is Insomnia by Marina Benjamin. Just not a love match. Okay, that's everything for today. I've never done any videos like this before, so please let me know what you think. You can genuinely tell me if you thought this was a waste of your time and mine. That's like really, it's good to hear if that is what you think. But if you'd like to see more of these types of casual going through my shelves type videos, please let me know that also below. And I'll see you soon for another video.